Hey guys, so today I'm doing an off-the-cuff video as I just don't have the time to do more editing this week. Some of those videos take over 10 hours to edit and create all the graphics for, so we're just going to be talking about this YouTube and some of the Freedom Cities content I had covered recently. Make sure to check that out if you haven't watched those two videos yet. It covers a lot of those billionaires in the tech industry that are interested in creating these new types of cities that are outside the oversight of the federal government. And so they would be, at first, under some pretext, they're going to have some oversight of the federal government, and then some will go out on their own according to certain sites. Now, what's interesting is I've found there are three terms being used. They are Freedom Cities, and the Freedom Cities is what I had covered recently. Now, I also just ran across this YouTube called the Free Cities Foundation, and they have a website that, interestingly enough, seems to more cater to the general population. Now, the Freedom Cities, under their website, they talk about the Freedom Cities context and how it could be different. So in my opinion, and keep in mind, these are just my opinions. I'm not stating anything as fact today. That's just a minor disclaimer. So I may critique some things today, and I may not get everything right, but I'm going to do my best to do just a general overview of some of these pages that I have up at the top here. And they're going to cover the topic of Freedom Cities, some of the connections. What I've noticed is the Free Cities Foundation seems to be catering towards the general population, at least from what I can tell. They even have their own podcast. So if you want to learn more about their perspective, their point of view on this, and it does seem to connect in some ways to crypto. So they talk about using crypto. Now, what's interesting is WorldCoin, if you're familiar at all. It is that iris scanner, the World ID connected stuff. Now, WorldCoin is a token type of crypto that is going to be utilized as a currency. And it sounds like, and this is just my opinion, it sounds like based on all the connections between the people behind WorldCoin and the people behind the Freedom Cities, it sounds like this all may be one big project, that the WorldCoin, the World ID, all of it can fit together nicely if you read about the actual plans for these Freedom Cities. Now, this Free City says it's a different type of project, especially when you read their article. They talk about, can the Freedom Cities actually be free cities? So they're saying it's something different. But what's interesting about that, if you go to the About Us, now remember, Prospera is one of the Freedom Cities that was out there in the Honduras, and we're going to be covering that as well. So we're going to cover that, but interestingly enough, we look down here, we don't see any of those names, but if we scroll to the very bottom, we don't see the names of Peter Thiel. We don't see Mark Andreessen here. But where is the funding coming from? Oh, would you look at that? There's Prospera right there. So Prospera is actually a city in Honduras. Now, it goes under this Zone for Employment and Economic Development, a ZEDE. So it's an economic development zone that's supposed to generate new economic growth and is supposed to take these places in poverty out of poverty. So with new opportunities for innovation, also acting as almost a tax haven. So this is interesting. This article from Vox talks about how the wealthy are redrawing the world, new types of governance, tax havens, and techno-utopias. And the question is, will they be used for good or not? That's the real question, and we should take a look at what Prospera has done in Honduras to see how the outcome may go. So let's take a look. About Us, we see the Prospera connection here, but interestingly enough, if you read their articles, it sounds like they're separate from Freedom Cities. But why do they have the same partners? That's a good question, isn't it? Very interesting. So I have the suspicion that the Free Cities Foundation is more so geared towards the general population and building attraction to free cities. Now, the Freedom Cities context And the charter cities terminology seems to be more geared towards the corporate interests and those tech companies, those billionaires, those investors that want to get out of taxes, possibly based on some of these articles talking about them possibly serving as tax havens where they won't even be able to collect taxes in the same fashion. In fact, not only that, I think it might have been this article, but they're going to have their own privatized police force, their own privatized governance model. They can collect their own taxes for their own possible corporate interests for this corporate-run cities. And if you look into the actual results, well, it looks like it's causing some issues in Honduras. And it could lead to the complete collapse of the Honduras as well, according to this Wired article here. Wired has been doing a lot of great coverage on these types of topics and oligarchy, things like that. So if you have an interest, I'm urging people to take this seriously. Not only that, some of these partners in this, like Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, have connections to Elon Musk. Well, guess what happened this week, in the last week and a half? Well, after the claimed attack on Twitter X, now I'm not even saying it was a real attack because I have no way to really verify that. But what's interesting is it was used as a justification to block all X users from logging in privately with Tor. And my personal belief is that X, as wanting to become this banking type platform, this new financial institution, is looking to have people identified. And this is also something I've noted with some of the posts when I could read X, which it's time to leave it, at least for me. I'm leaving it because unless they stop blocking Tor or they stop blocking my other access methods, I'm just not going to use it. It's just not going to be something I'm going to use. But you can follow me over on Falstodon. So make sure to give a follow over there. That's the only social media I'm maintaining at this time. It's just too much work I have going on. I got a lot of new obligations to deal with, so I'm not able to edit as much, but I want to still come out with videos. So I might be doing some of these off-the-cuff type videos and give some of my analysis on things. So that's what I'm doing today. And make sure to share the video. Appreciate it. And we're going to be taking a look at this lawsuit. So a lawsuit is happening from the backers of the startup city. So the Prospera, which we saw was a partner of the Free Cities, but interestingly enough, they say they question if free cities or freedom cities could be technically free cities. It sounds like a lot of interchangeability, but then when you look at the website for free cities, they say there's no guarantee that freedom cities would also be free cities. Very, interesting. That's kind of interesting. Why pretend it's different? I mean, maybe it is different. To be a free city, it would have to have as much of a blank slate regulatory system as possible. So I'll have to read more into this to see what they really mean and why they have the same partnerships, why they have the same backers, the same investors, Prospera. And let's get back to that lawsuit topic. So the Prospera city inside of Honduras was claimed to lead people out of poverty, but it's actually, a lot of people have reported it's actually created more poverty. So what's interesting is they've actually taken advantage of different types of trade treaties with Honduras and the United States, and they are now suing Honduras for over $10 billion. Or maybe that's more than $10 billion. Anyways, it's a Delaware-based company. A lot of corporations, you'll note, are actually in Delaware in the United States. And the reason for that is for tax reasons and otherwise. There's actually no sales tax in Delaware, if I recall. And some other features of Delaware make it very attractive to big companies and investors. So that is one reason there's a lot of corporations that are incorporated in Delaware. And as we scroll down, we can see a picture of the map. There's Prospera, the economic zone that is essentially going to be carved out of the country within the country. So it's a nation within a nation, so to speak, where you have these big tech companies and firms and investors that literally are creating their own nations in a way. inside other nations. And to me, that's a major, major risk to the subversion of that country and the actual rights of the people who live there, because it's obviously going to be something they plan to expand. In fact, I read on the charter cities thing that they want to expand in the US as many as the market can bear. So as many freedom cities, as many charter cities as the market can bear. Originally, it was stated that it would only be 10, and there would be a contest of various parties that would then, therefore, kind of win their way to have their own cities that would be governed by themselves. But if you read into these articles, you'll see that they'll have their own court systems, their own privatized police. I would not be surprised if we saw Blackwater come into play there, things like that. At least companies like Blackwater, some of the other G companies. There's one, I think it's called G4 or something. There's a G security group as well. That's another privatized type security military organization that definitely could be a privatized police force. So these are all things people should be aware about, these major changes that are happening. And if you read these articles, they talk about how Gerardo Torres, Honduras' vice minister, has said the country cannot afford to pay what these investors are seeking. So they had originally an agreement for a 50-year period for this Prospera city, but it turned out it was causing major issues in the country of Honduras. And so in that way, they wanted to sort of work their way out of the problems that were happening, that were threatening the livelihoods and the quality of life of their people. And so in that way, they actually became sued by the very investors that started this. And the country's already has $16.5 billion in debt. And so this is the kind of thing that could happen. So there's all kinds of agreements that are made. You may not be able to get out of it if there's problems that come with it. So it is, as they say, something desirous here. So it sounds like there's a lot of connections between these things, and that's what it's looking like. It's also looking like there's major legal threats if you dare to try and get out of some of these city tax haven type tech utopias. You can read about some of the people behind it on this Vox article as well. And so, essentially my conclusion here is that there seems to be a connection between these three things: the Charter Cities Initiative, the Freedom Cities, and the Free Cities. But on the other hand, the Free Cities Foundation appears to be more geared towards the general population and to speak of the benefits of this new form of governance. But to my question there is, are we going to be happy with these privatized courts, these privatized laws, these privatized police forces, these privatized taxes, all of these things? And also, of course, as mentioned in my previous video, the fact that the regulations and the things that actually protect people from these medical experiments that are being talked about, some of them involve mRNA, vaccines and otherwise, where they even stated that they wanted to see in Freedom Cities to actually have everyone on an mRNA gene therapy. Now, to me, I always question, at what cost is that going to be? Is that going to be your UBI? And as we eliminate these agencies in the United States government, as we're seeing today under the Trump administration, are we creating a situation, for instance, that right now they're cutting Social Security? I have family members who actually depend on that to survive, just basic survival, and I'm even helping them out financially as well, sending them money just to try and help them. So to me, this is a huge issue to me, watching them cut some of the things. And also, of course, they're talking about cutting Medicaid, Medicare over the next 10 years, $880 billion cut from the budget there. And to me, I'm seeing a creation of almost a dependency on these corporate interests. At least this is what could happen. What could very well happen is if you cut all of these types of backdrops, these safety nets, and then you also have AI replace all of the jobs, where does that leave the people? that leaves them basically helpless to a point where they're going to be dependent on the corporate interests that are being invested in here. So guys, that's what I have to share with you guys today. Pretty random video today, but I just wanted to kind of cover some of what I was reading about. You know, as mentioned here, it says it will allow private corporations to enjoy an astonishing level of autonomy, including establishing their own courts, laws, tax systems, and private police forces. As mentioned, think Blackwater, think things like that when you see these kinds of texts. And it's already causing the Honduras to feel threatened based on the lawsuit that's going to basically throw them into bankruptcy from their own government saying this. So is it going to be a future where we're going to be, the government and the safety nets are going to be destroyed as they replace the jobs with AI, and then we're going to be put into the hands of these private corporate entities who have their own cities, their own control of the opportunity, the economic flow in and out? That's what it looks like right here, and I'm just spitballing on this. So let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and share the video, and follow me over on Falstodon. It's a Mastodon instance. You can follow me over there, and that's generally where I'll be when I have a chance to get online. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys later, and thanks for following, thanks for commenting, and if you want to support this, you can go to bmc.link/politictech, and I'll be back later with more on how to protect your security and privacy.